Hello, friends. Good morning. Welcome to today's Daily Dharma. As you may have noticed, we didn't have the Daily Dharma last week. One of the staff who support it had to take time off unexpectedly, and the other online staff were busy with other online things IMS was doing, so it had to be canceled. And this is actually the theme of what I want to talk about and practice with you this morning. And that is that we're not in control. You know, did we plan to not kind of broadcast last week? No. Is that what we would have wanted to happen? No. And yet there we are, right? Due to conditions that arose that were beyond our control. That's what the outcome was. And while that may be kind of be a bit more of a striking example of that, this is basically happening all the time because it's an example of one of the common or universal characteristics of the realm we live in. And, well, it's an example of all of them because they're all the same. Anicca, dukkha, and anatta are all just examples of the same thing, really. But the one I want to point out to is the dukkha and the vulnerability aspect of dukkha, often translated as suffering, which it's not wrong, but it doesn't capture the breadth of what's happening. And so in addition to that, one word I like to add to the translation is vulnerability. And vulnerability, precisely because things are changing, one of the other characteristics, and changing outside of our control. And if you just put this lens on and start to perceive experience through this lens, then you see it's happening all the time. For instance, just today, quite a dry spring here in Barrie. Be great to have some rain. Forecast was supposed to get perhaps a good slug of rain today, and then things change and just barely sprinkling out and not going to hardly rain at all, which again, for farmers or gardeners or whatever, is that what folks would have wanted? No, really need the rain, but that's what happened, again, outside of our control. And here we are, left with perhaps, not the end of the world, but, a situation that, wouldn't be optimal perhaps for these folks. And so with this way of looking, then we can relate to these types of experiences with the understanding that, oh, right, this is just an example of how it is. Because if we ignore, and this is where, in Buddhist teachings, the word ignorance comes from. This is exactly what's being pointed to, not like ignorance that somehow their, mind is not capable like that, but ignoring the truth, the fact of the three characteristics. And when we ignore them, and then things happen outside of our control, that's where we can get reactive. I didn't want this to happen. This shouldn't have happened. It's like, well, if you didn't want it to happen, then you're going to have to move to a different universe where there's different laws that govern how things happen, because here we are. And, so much of our Vipassana practice is to really come to terms with how it is. And even more than come to terms, just really come to accept and be one with, be congruent with how it is. And then in that congruence, right, there's no rub, because we're being with how it is. And there's none of this or less of this, and therefore less suffering. And like I said, we can watch this play out everywhere at any time. So let's go ahead and do some of the formal practice and use our lens of not being in control and do the formal practice and kind of pay attention in that way. So settling in to the body, whatever posture you're going to do the formal practice in. And even right now, you can use this lens as you become aware somatically of the body. You start to feel it. And how is it? It's like, well, I've got jeans on, and that often doesn't go so well in the sitting. And I can feel the constriction on my legs and how they're going to start falling asleep. Okay, not something I would choose if I could choose, but here we are. The body's like this. So even just this cursory feeling into the body, using this lens of not in control to notice. And for those of you who practice a lot with really feeling the body, you'll know sometimes, we're quite connected to the sensations. Other times, not so much. It vacillates. And so as you tune into the body, maybe the body is more or less kind of available, you might say, to you sensationally right now. And you really can't control that. Certainly, the more we calm the body and let go, open it, soften it, that's going to be conditions that support feeling the body. But in the end, it will be how it will be. Even as we invite the body to soften and relax, there may be areas of holding that we notice that we can invite to let go, and they actually do let go and loosen. Other areas, maybe not so much. If we feel constriction, we soften around it, and it pretty much, as far as we can tell at least, stays the same, not in control. So even this, with these examples, just as we settle in with the body to start viewing our experience with this lens of not in control. And as we stay with the body, feeling the sensations, at some point, either we intentionally, we bring our attention, or spontaneously, we start feeling the breath. And similarly, viewing the breath with the same lens, or through this same lens of not in control. How is the breath right now? Settled, calm, kind of silky, smooth, agitated, rough, not settled, tight, And again, we can bring the intention of calm to the breath, and yet in the end, it will be how it is for any given breath. We have the intention that we stay connected with the body and breath, and yet at times the mind wanders off, not in our control. When the conditions are supportive for that, it will happen. And then when the conditions are supportive for mindfulness to arise and notice that the mind had wandered off, that will happen. All that happens beyond our control in the moment. And this is very helpful to understand so that when we do wake up from being lost in thought, we don't blame ourselves or give ourselves a hard time. And just appreciate being back, rest the attention back with the body and breath, and continue. Due to things being beyond our control, we show up and just do the best we can, understanding that's really all we can do. And when one really gets the sense of that, um, it can bring quite a lot of ease to the formal practice. The undue pressure that we can put on ourselves can lift. And we show up with the wholesome intention to be present practice wise effort as best we can, and let go. Thank you for your practice. And so we can move through our life with this lens of not in control. And as with all, the Buddhist teachings, this is not meant to be, a bummer, kind of resigning ourselves to live in this, terrible world. No, it's just becoming congruent with how things are. So the goal isn't to be a bummer, it's to actually, as with all the Buddhist teachings, every single one of them, the goal is to not suffer, to put an end to that. Let that go. And so, see, you can play a game, keep a tally. How many situations can you notice that are an example of not in control? How many can you notice in one day? Where there's a good place to start. Okay, and speaking of not being in control, if the conditions in your life, in my life, in general, allow it, I'll see you tomorrow. If not, then we won't. I hope you have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.